Hey everyone, Bruce Eckfeldt here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Make sure that you subscribe and turn on notifications so we can let you know when the next video is posted. You can also check us out at eckfeldt.com for more great content. With that, let's go check out the video.
You're listening to Scaling Up Services, where we speak with entrepreneurs, authors, business experts, and thought leaders to give you the knowledge and insights you need to scale your service-based business faster and easier. And now, here is your host, business coach Bruce Eckfeldt.
Welcome everyone. This is Scaling Up Services. I'm Bruce Eckfeldt. I'm your host. Today I'm here with Wendy Lieber. Wendy, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
And Wendy is founder of Content Bacon. And we're going to hear a little bit about the company. And it is a great example of a service-based business. So I'm excited to hear, how you founded the company, kind of how you've been able to grow and scale it. I know you've been going through a lot of growth recently. So I'm curious and excited to hear about that. Why don't we start with just a little bit of background, how you got into the business, what the business kind of originally did, and then how you've kind of grown and evolved it over time.
Sure. So the Content Bacon was founded in the fall of 2014, and I previously had another company called Athena Marketing that was more a strategic marketing company, and everything I did at Athena Marketing was customized consulting. So it was very challenging to scale, and I was very interested in scaling a business. And I happened to be at that time in the EO Accelerator program, which was all about, how to scale above $1 million. And I met my current partner, Dave Custon, in Accelerator. And we started just kind of collaborating on, he was more in the branding, brand identity side. And again, what I was doing was more strategy consulting. And we started kind of collaborating on what we might do together. And one thing I had noticed is that every company was challenged with how to create enough content to stay relevant in today's world, with all the social media that was, becoming more and more important, just keeping your website up to date. And so that's really how it was born, was, hey, why don't we deviate from what we're doing, take what we're seeing, and create a company that is just hyper-focused on content creation. So we created a subscription-based service where companies could sign up for, a package of content that might include a certain amount of blogs, a certain amount of social media, emails, and we wanted to make it really easy. We wanted to make it really affordable, but we also wanted to make sure it was high quality. So we invested a lot in our infrastructure and finding, good writers, good editors, and we like I said, we started in the fall, and here we are almost 4 years later, and we've grown exponentially.
Yeah, that's great. So let me ask a little bit about that pivot, because I think it's a key kind of strategy, or it's a key thing, and that I think a lot of service-based businesses run into, which is they've got a pretty good client base, and they have kind of a range of services that work with that client base. But as they go to scale, it becomes challenging. It's challenging to figure out how to grow the staff, how to grow the kind of capabilities. When you decided to focus on the content development, how did that conversation happen, or what did that look like? And did you look at sort of lots of different angles there? Was it, were there other ideas that you were grappling with, or was it kind of an epiphany aha for you?
Yeah, so focus was definitely one of those things I had kept hearing about, but I wasn't doing. Yeah. Like, I really had it that saying yes to everything made me invaluable to my clients. And I got that. And when you're invaluable to your clients, you cannot scale.
You can't take a vacation either.
Yeah. And that's, at one point, that was what I wanted. Yeah. I wanted to be invaluable to my clients. They would call me at 3:00 in the morning if they had an issue. And again, it's like, be careful what you wish for. So the aha moment was really understanding what held me back from having a scalable business, realizing it was me. And so one of the things I had started to do prior to officially launching Content Bacon is I had created these, content packages, if you will, for current clients, and was just kind of dabbling in them. At that time, I was doing all of the writing and editing and posting. But what I learned is the interaction with the customers was so much easier. They gave me their credit card. So every month, it went through. I didn't have the same type of interaction with them because they were just so happy to kind of be checking the box on those things. And so that was really the aha, is that I had something that required less of me, the customer facing side, and I had something that I could really start to identify the processes and systems that I was using, because that was the other key thing with Athena Marketing. I never knew how I did anything because I did it from scratch every time. So even if I wanted to scale, I didn't know how, because I was just basing it on, me and what I knew and what the customer was dealing with. And it was all customized. And there was nothing that was, this is how we do this is how we do that. So that was the other key thing that held me back, was I had no systems and processes.
Yeah. I like the idea of kind of the experiment of figuring out how to take your current customers, find a product or service that you can kind of provide them, knowing that you can do it now, but it's something you could easily find other staff to do. But I think the trick there is to have the discipline to do it in a systematic way. So even if you could create a really great custom piece, the perfect article for them for this one thing. If it's not something you could produce repeatedly with other staff, then not do it, because you really want to test that piece. I like that idea, and I think it's something a lot of people can try, because they've got current customers, and a lot of times it's just figuring out what is the angle or what is the service I can provide for them that I could scale.
And I think something that I had learned, again, I learned the hard way, is, I would go on entrepreneurial benders all the time, so other people would approach me with ideas that they wanted me to pursue. And I always thought everyone's business, was more interesting and faster to grow than mine. So I would constantly, get the shiny object syndrome and go, yeah, I'll work on that. And again, just go on these tangents. And so this was finally when I did it for myself, and I started saying no to anything and everything. And even when Dave and I first started talking, because I had kind of gone down different routes like that before, I was like, kind of like a big no, like I'm not doing, I'm not collaborating our businesses together, because then we would have just had a bigger version of what we already had. But what I had said is, I have been dabbling in this side thing that I'd be willing to explore with you. And that was the difference maker. It was finally me owning what I wanted to do and not letting other people's ideas, that they would come to me with, distract me, which I think probably a lot of entrepreneurs can relate to, is that, every other business seems more sexy and more interesting than ours at the time.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea of an entrepreneurial bender, because there's a little bit of a hangover, like you have to get back into your business, and usually it's probably post some EO event where you're away for the week and having fed all sorts of new ideas and talking with other folks. So you've figured out this niche. You kind of focused on the content development. Once you kind of figured out this area, how did you iterate, or how did you kind of hone in the product? So you mentioned that you were doing monthly subscriptions. Like, how did you come up with kind of the packaging of that, the pricing of that, the honing the options that people had within that service?
Yeah, it was really based on just what I had already been learning by doing it, and, kind of just some guesstimating that, hey, we're going to start with a good, better, best scenario, and we're going to introduce it, and let's see what kind of response we get. And we got, sometimes I'd rather be, lucky than smart. Yeah. We got lucky, because what we were proposing, and I think, I was very sensitive to price points. I wanted to make sure, I was in that entrepreneurial community. At that time, I was under $1 million and with accelerators. So I kind of knew what the thresholds were. At least I thought I knew what the thresholds were for what people might spend on a service like this. And so just creating kind of those price points that I thought were really valuable for the client, and gave them, that content that had them look relevant, had them look like they had a pulse, would, increase their traffic and awareness. And then we just went out and tested it. And to this day, that's what we're always doing. Just, we're using the market to test and validate what our offering is and what makes the most sense and what people really need. And sometimes they know what they need, and sometimes they don't know, and we can educate them.
How, and at this point, your ideal or core customer, how would you describe them?
So when we first started, we kind of had 3 different groupings of customers. We had kind of the customer who really didn't know about content marketing, but once they got educated, were like, oh, I need to do this and I need help. Then we had the second type customer that had dabbled in this, had tried to do it themselves, and just realized how challenging it is to create content on a consistent basis, but really understood the value already, didn't necessarily need to be educated so much, but needed a reliable resource. And then the third was someone who was investing heavily in this, saw the value, but just needed more and wanted an additional reliable resource. And what we found, so those were kind of what we started with, and what we found was 1 and 2 were our initial sweet spot, with 2 being our true core. And that to this day, we've refined it since then. Today, we're more niche focused with technology companies, healthcare, and kind of a big bucket of professional services, which is, attorneys, accountants, insurance. And the key attributes are, one, these companies want to position themselves as subject matter experts. They have prospects that do research online. It's a considered purchase, and the value of it and the time it takes for someone to make a decision is, there's some time and money there. So it's worth investing in content on a consistent basis to build that asset. So that's truly who our core customer is today, and revenue-wise, they're usually between 2 and 20 million.
Got it. Good. And I think that's great that you have put the work in to actually define the core ideal customer, because I think that's something that can be done. I'm assuming that as you've kind of refined your offering and refined that target, you had customers along the way that were historical or legacy customers that didn't fit that core or didn't want that service. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, so we did. So we had a couple things happen that were both helpful and also learning lessons. So I was able to take a lot of my Athena marketing clients and transition them to Content Bacon customers. And some of those we still have today, thankfully. Some of our, early customers that we took on because, at that point we were just hungry, they just kind of caused themselves out. It just didn't work. And then when we got to a point where we felt like we could, fire customers, we did that. We just had conversations, and we started weeding out customers that just were not the right fit. And then today we are very careful about the sales process and the qualification process, and making sure that the customers that we do bring on really fit the mold, because what we learned is that the customers that don't take up so much time, so much energy, and we give them that time and energy, and then it ends up not going well, for anyone. So it's like you don't even get the benefit of that, and you neglect the customers that really need and deserve your attention. So that's a lesson. I think we're always learning. We just had a big experience with a Fortune 500 company, a division of a Fortune 500 company that we were so excited about. And we're like, okay, this could be a new niche for us. And we just completely overlooked some of the questions that one needs to ask to enter that market. Like, what's your process on your side to approve? How many people are involved in the decision-making? Things that seem so common sense now, but we didn't ask those questions. And it turned out to be a nightmare, because the bureaucracy of dealing with a company like that versus the entrepreneurial companies we deal with, even though it was a smaller division, just completely ate all of our margin. And so if we are going to enter into that, which, we might, we've now learned the hard way, how to do it smartly.
Yeah. Give us some insight in terms of the questions you do ask. So when you're dealing with a prospect or you're kind of qualifying a prospect, what are some of the key questions or things that you look at that help you identify whether or not they're going to be an ideal customer?
Yeah, so part of it is, their understanding about content marketing, inbound marketing, what they're doing today, what results they're looking for, and how quickly or not quickly they're looking for results. So if they are coming to us and they're expecting to go from, never doing any kind of blogging or social media or email campaign, which again seems really basic, but you'd be surprised how many companies just aren't doing that. And they think that by doing that they're going to start getting, leads right away. That's a warning sign for us. So one of the things we try to do is understand, well, what are you doing today? Where are you at today? What's your traffic that you're getting? A lot of times they don't know that, or they're getting very low traffic. What kind of conversions are you getting through your online efforts today? Again, if they're not getting any, then we probably need to start with, let's grow your traffic. Let's grow your kind of conversions first. So we try to really take our time to understand where they're at and educate them on, to me, it's very similar to going to a networking event. If you go to a networking event and you're looking to get customers at a networking event, you're probably going to repel everyone at that event because of the way you're being, the way you're showing up.
Wrong energy. Yeah.
Versus if you go wanting to add value, wanting to get to know people, wanting to develop relationships, it's going to take longer, but it's going to be, more valuable for you. And it's really the same. If you're building an asset with this, and, our whole way of being as a company is we believe that being an educator, giving more than you get, is a way of being that if you take that on has tremendous benefits. And so we, try to look for companies that have that same willingness, that same way of being, because that's what wins today, not hard sell, quick turnarounds. This is not direct response marketing. That if you want to go spend money on those things, that's fine. That's just not our niche.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the growth of the company in terms of people. So I think a lot of this ends up, as you begin to find this service niche and, kind of core customer, ideal customer, the flip also happens, which is you start to see what kind of cultural values or cultural traits you're really going to zero in on and what you need to build in terms of organization, which means you need to get more focused and more specific about the people that you bring on. What have you noticed over time in terms of ways in which you've identified who ends up really being a good fit at the company and who does not, and what have you put in place to try to increase your batting percentage on those things?
Yeah. So this is, ongoing. I think for me, I went from being the doer in my business to having to really grow and develop myself as a leader, where I spend the majority of my time today in that mode, creating the culture, implementing the culture, reinforcing the culture, and the whole hiring. And so, I've really had to develop myself to do that successfully. And so the first thing is just understanding what your culture is. And again, because I came from that, EO accelerator, EO environment, I think that was one of the biggest things in this business, is that I was able to utilize so much of what I had learned and not done in my previous business in this business from the get-go. So creating those values, having a hiring process. So again, I used to hire just kind of based on gut feel and I hated it, because it was just so challenging. And so I found a process that at least gave us some early indicators. So, we, when we put out ads, we don't ask for resumes. We put our core values in the ads. And the first thing people have to do is, let us know why they think they would be a good fit, how they've exemplified those values. So that filters out, like 95% of the people, because most people don't follow directions, which, doesn't work for us. That's a key piece. And then we spend a lot of time in the hiring. And again, sometimes it's very challenging because sometimes we need people quick and you just want to, get a good gut feel and hire them, which always ends up badly. So, we spend a lot of time. We use the WHO process. What is that? Jeff Smart.
Jeff Smart, yeah.
Yeah. And so, we have an intro call that we have very specific questions we ask. We have a very long interview, whether it's, here in our office or via Zoom, that we tediously go through things. We're writing down things as they tell us, like who they reported to. So when we ask for references, we're not asking for them to give us references. We're saying, hey, can we talk to this person who you reported to? So all of that. And we've added in our own things because there are certain things you have to be able to do in this environment. If you're an editor or writer, you have to be able to edit or write. So we have different tests that we have people take. And we keep kind of adding to that. We do a lot of stuff in real time where we just kind of put people on the spot to see how they react. And the more we've put that into place, the better we're hiring. And again, if we can find people that are coachable and that have the right values, there's so much of what we do that we can teach versus if we find the people that have the experience and that seem like they'd be perfect, but they don't have our culture, they never fit. And we end up costing us so much more. So I can't say that I've got it nailed. It's definitely one of my biggest challenges in growing this business is growing the team and finding the right people. But, luckily I have some tools, I have some resources, I have some systems that make it a little bit easier.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty common. Actually, I know Vern Harnish did a presentation up here in New Jersey a while ago, and pulled the audience out of the four decisions, people, strategy, execution, cash, which is the hard one. And I think it was over 50% of the audience was people. So I think it's pretty common for most companies, and especially most companies at this kind of growth stage. And then ironically, I think, or maybe not ironically, I think there's a correlation as you refine and target and zero in on your service, the training side actually becomes easier, because now the amount of things you're doing and how well you've defined them and made them repeatable has increased. So you can actually focus more on the cultural side, on the cultural fit side, because you can train. You have processes, you have ways of teaching people how to do things. So you don't need to be quite as focused as sort of on the technical skill. I mean, certainly you need fundamentals of being able to write and things like that, but how to run this system, how to do a blog post, those kind of things become very teachable. So which is a huge strategic advantage from a business point of view, because your ability then to go out to the market to find talent shifts dramatically, and it opens up to probably to a lot of people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to go to if you didn't have these defined processes. And I think that's something that people don't realize on the strategy side. Is one of the reasons we want to do that, really zero in on the service, is that actually makes it easier to find talent or find good talent.
Sure. Yeah, and it makes it so much easier. And again, not that we're there yet, where this is still something we're finding, but when you find talent, onboarding them, so having that training process that doesn't cause so much brain damage to the organization every time you bring on a new person, because you've now developed, very similar to what we do with our customers when we onboard, we're doing that same thing with our new team members, so that we can constantly be bringing on new team members without it disrupting the organization. And I think that's the other key thing about the hiring, is always be hiring. Because we have so many times felt like we had our team filled out and like, okay, we can take a breather. And then inevitably something happens, whether it's a growth spurt or someone leaves or moves. And then, you just don't realize how, just like in sales, you don't realize how long it takes to kind of fill that pipeline again. So we are constantly, hiring and keeping the bench full, so that we've got people ready to go. And that was a lesson we learned the hard way, not just once, not just twice, probably 3 times.
3 times a charm. It's a funnel. I think the way you kind of compare it to sales is really on point, because it's about having a flow of opportunities. And if you are not constantly filling the top of that funnel, it will go dry. And it often goes dry when you need it the most. And it's one of those delay factors. So, if you wait until you need a person to start looking for a person, you're far too late. And, you're looking months out, and you're probably putting yourself in a situation where you're going to be pulling the trigger, hiring people maybe too quickly and that are not a best fit, or at least, given more time and more candidates, you could choose a much better candidate. So I think both of those are really key. I always love to give kind of people a chance to talk about other things they've learned, other lessons that they've had. What else would you recommend for folks that are in this kind of leadership position, in this kind of growth company mode, in the kind of services sectors? What else have you learned that you think it would be helpful for them to know or hear about?
Yeah, so I'll just reiterate focus, because I think when you market to everyone, you market to no one. And I think getting really crystal clear at what you want to be great at and what you don't want to be great at is a really important thing to, on an ongoingly basis, do. And we've done that, where often, we're focused, and then customers start asking for custom things and we start saying yes, and all of a sudden we're not focused anymore. So it's not just something you do once, it's something that you have to, I think, do on an ongoing basis. I think the other key thing for us was hiring before you think you're ready. So I think when you're at the early stages and you don't think you have the cash flow to support whatever position it is, you'll end up doing it yourself with the mindset, when this happens, I'll hire someone. We hired people to start doing the writing, start doing all the things that we knew we didn't want to do before we had cash flow, because we didn't want to get sucked into that again. And it works out, because then you have the ability to go do the things that you're really good at. So, I think that's really important. And I also love the line Jack Daly uses, if you don't have an assistant, you are an assistant. Yes. And I think sometimes we don't realize how much assistant type stuff we let fall in our lap, and it just takes away from the best and highest use of your talents. And I think even more importantly, it thwarts the growth of your business. If you're doing that, you're really holding your business back. I mentioned developing systems and processes. Again, I can't tell you how important that is. And that was one of the things I had heard so many times and just never did. And it's just so important that if you want to scale, you have to be able to show people how to do what you do. And not that I want to be like a McDonald's, but McDonald's is a great example because they're able to create that consistency because they've got such, strong systems and processes for everything they do. And if you can't train people because it's all in your head, then, you're holding your...
I'm curious do you have any good examples of processes that you kind of started with or that you realize were really important for you in the growth of the business to get out of your head and into something, and how you give us some insight on how you actually did that? Was that you writing it down on a checklist? Did you create videos? What was the process for doing that?
Yeah, I think all of the above. Again, I think because I came from a company where I was the company and I handled all facets of the customer interaction, that when I had people, on my team that could do that, but there might be a problem with the customer. And I was so used to jumping in and handling any problem because that's what I did. And I realized by doing that, I was continuing to hold the business back because I was the bottleneck. Yeah. And so I think one is just a mindset, allowing your team to make decisions and make mistakes, and then look at those mistakes and as a team just determine, what caused them, how can we do a better job, and then creating the process around that. But not being so hyper-focused on, customers can't be unhappy and I have to fix everything. And again, I think that was more of a mindset for me just because, I was so used to, being the customer face for so long that when I saw my team start to do, it could be as simple as me thinking they took too long to answer an email, so it's just crazy stuff that I was doing to hold the company back. And so it was really kind of trusting that I had a team that could do what needed to be done. And if they made mistakes, which we allow in this environment, we welcome it. As long as we can talk about it, then we can solve anything. And so I think that for me was huge, and just letting them, input. Like today, it's so great because if we say yes to a customer on something that's outside of, kind of our menu, our team fights back, and it's so great because they're protecting, they're protecting us, they're protecting the business, they're protecting the processes. And initially that was a little hard for me because again, I was so used to doing what I wanted. So I think if you're trying to create a company that can scale, I'm doing everything I can so this business runs without me and that, it doesn't need me. And I think just that mindset alone helps you identify what things get in the way.
Yeah. And I think it can be a really hard one for a lot of entrepreneurs. And it has to do with kind of, sometimes it's kind of ego, but I think it's really about value. Entrepreneurs, they want to solve problems. They want to serve customers. They want to engage in problems. And so it's tough to kind of realize that if you want to scale the business, if you really want to see growth, you have to step out of that kind of being the critical person in the business and, essentially creating a business that at some level doesn't need you for day-to-day operations anymore. But that can be tough if you haven't, kind of switch that mindset and understand that's ultimately going to be powerful for you. So we're going to hit time here in a second. Wendy, I would love to give you a chance to, if people want to learn more about you, about Content Bacon, what's the best way to contact you and find out more information?
Yeah, so definitely you can email me, Wendy, Wendy, @contentbacon.com. I love conversations about entrepreneurship. I love helping companies with their, content journey. So, feel free to reach out to me, about anything and everything. Our website has a ton of information, social media, but I'd love to hear from you and, help however I can support you on this journey.
That's great. Thank you, Wendy. I'll make sure for everyone listening that those links are in the show notes so they can click and learn more about Content Bacon and contact you. Wendy, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. Have a great day, Bruce.
Thanks.
Bye.
You've been listening to Scaling Up Services with business coach Bruce Eckfeldt. To find a full list of podcast episodes, download the tools and worksheets, and access other great content, visit the website at scalingupservices.com. And don't forget to sign up for the free newsletter at scalingupservices.com/newsletter.